Picture this for a second. Imagine waking up and suddenly losing the ability to move your hand. Or maybe you can't speak clearly anymore. Or even worse, you can't remember the face of someone you love. Now, for millions of people out there living with neurological injuries or diseases, this isn't just a dark thought experiment, right? It's their everyday reality. Well, welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive deep into a genuinely groundbreaking piece of technology called Neuroloop. It's a platform that is literally reimagining how we handle neurological damage. We're finally moving past just patching up symptoms and stepping into this wild new era where we can actually guide the human brain to heal itself.
So we know the human brain is incredibly adaptive. It's constantly rewiring itself through neuroplasticity. But here's the catch. After something like a stroke, a spinal cord injury, or maybe the onset of Parkinson's, those delicate internal signals get completely thrown out of whack. The nervous system tries its best to reorganize, but honestly, it's pretty inefficient. Recovery ends up being agonizingly slow, incomplete, or sometimes just impossible. But what if? And this is a big what if. What if we could actually listen to the brain in real time? What if we could figure out exactly what it's trying to do, and then instantly respond to help it along?
Because right now, traditional rehab is basically just asking patients to repeat the same movements over and over and over again. The whole idea is to force the brain into rewiring itself just through sheer brute repetition. You know, it's kind of like trying to learn the piano by just mashing the keys repeatedly, hoping a beautiful song eventually happens. It's totally passive. We apply a treatment and then we wait. We just cross our fingers and hope neuroplasticity does its thing. But the data is super clear on this. Hope alone just isn't going to cut it. We desperately need a way to actively guide that recovery process right in the exact moment the patient is trying to move.
Okay, to really get this, we have to talk about the difference between open-loop and closed-loop systems. Think about traditional open-loop treatments, like conventional deep brain stimulation. It's basically like a space heater that's just running blindly. It blasts out heat no matter how hot or cold the room actually is. But a closed-loop system, that's what Neuroloop is. It acts way more like a smart thermostat. It's constantly checking the room's temperature, or in our case, the brain's real-time neural activity, and it adjusts its output on the fly. So instead of a boring one-way lecture, it becomes this dynamic, adaptive conversation.
And that brings us right to the star of the show, Neuroloop. This is an intelligent, closed-loop neurotech platform built from the ground up to help the brain heal itself. It creates a seamless, real-time feedback loop between raw brain activity, artificial intelligence, and targeted stimulation. It's a total game changer because it takes us from passive waiting into an active, super smart conversation with the nervous system. And we aren't talking about a doctor looking over a chart 20 minutes later. We're talking about an intelligent response happening in literal milliseconds.
To really wrap our heads around this, let's break the Neuroloop platform down into 4 main layers. Think of it like the life cycle of one really fast conversation. First up, it acquires the signal. Second, it decodes what that signal is actually trying to say. Third, it fires back a perfectly adaptive response. And finally, layer 4, it learns from the whole exchange. When you stack these 4 things together, biology and technology literally sync up, bridging that frustrating gap between what a patient wants to do and what their body can actually physically pull off.
So how do those first 2 steps actually play out in the real world? Well, first the system grabs the signal. It captures the patient's neural intention to move, even if their arm or leg is completely paralyzed. Then comes the really cool part, neural decoding. The AI doesn't just look at that brain activity as a bunch of static or biological noise. It uses state detection models to translate that noise into a language we can use. It can literally recognize patterns like, oh hey, the patient is trying to open their hand right now, or okay, the brain is entering a perfect state for learning.
Now, you might be wondering, how on earth does a machine talk back to a human brain? Well, it does this using the absolute magic of something called optogenetics. If you haven't heard of it, optogenetics is where we introduce these special, light-sensitive proteins right into specific brain cells. Once they're in there, scientists can actually control the electrical firing of those exact cells with millisecond precision, just by flashing targeted light at them. It is wild.
The mechanics under the hood here are just fascinating. These genetically engineered proteins, which are called opsins, get introduced to the cells. Let's take one called channel rhodopsin, for example. I like to think of it as a microscopic bouncer at an exclusive nightclub. When it gets hit with a super precise pulse of blue light, the bouncer opens the door, ions rush into the cell, and bam, the neuron instantly gets excited and fires. There are other opsins too, like halorhodopsin, which do the exact opposite. They act as inhibitors when you hit them with yellow light. We can literally turn specific neural circuits on or off, exactly like a light switch.
Of course, getting that light safely deep into the brain isn't exactly easy. That's where the physical hardware of this tech comes in.
Neuroloop uses these incredibly tiny, flexible probes that can sit right on or even inside the brain tissue. They're packed with dense micro-LED arrays to shoot those targeted light pulses directly at the neurons. And the best part? The whole thing is wireless and inductively powered. Plus, it uses biocompatible polymer coatings so the body doesn't freak out and reject it. That means absolutely no rigid, clunky fiber optic cables tethering a patient to a machine.
Which brings us to the fourth and honestly probably the most profound layer of all this, learning over time. Because Neuroloop is closed loop, it doesn't just blindly react, it learns. As the patient goes through repeated therapy sessions, the AI is quietly in the background, building a highly predictive model of that specific person's brain. It learns exactly which neural signals mean an improvement is coming, and precisely which light stimulation tricks lead to the strongest recovery. The therapy becomes 100% dynamic. It is completely bespoke to the patient's exact neural state, changing millisecond by millisecond.
I know. It sounds totally sci-fi, right? But the crazy thing is, we are already seeing real, demonstrated functional improvements in animal models for both stroke and spinal cord injuries. In the stroke models, when they used targeted light stimulation right next to the brain lesion, it triggered this massive surge in proteins called GAP43. You can think of GAP43 as these tiny microscopic construction workers that literally build new neural pathways. It led to highly measurable improvements in motor and sensory function. And in spinal cord injuries, stimulating specific motor neurons actually helped retrain damaged circuits to restore critical life functions, like breathing. So the ripple effect here, it's just massive. The potential clinical applications are incredibly broad. Obviously, we're talking huge leaps for stroke rehab and spinal cord injuries, but this closed-loop optogenetic approach could completely revolutionize how we treat Parkinson's disease, too. Instead of just flooding the brain with medication, we could actually retrain the aberrant circuits. It could even be used to suppress epileptic seizures by spotting the neural warning signs before they happen. Imagine that, detecting a seizure early and sending a tiny pulse of inhibitory light to just turn it off before it even fully starts. No way, right?
So if you take away just one core thing from this explainer today, let it be this. We are right in the middle of a massive shift. We are moving away from passive medical treatment and sprinting toward interactive neural healing. We aren't just putting Band-Aids on symptoms anymore, and we definitely aren't just sitting around waiting for the brain to fix itself. Neuroloop takes raw brain activity and turns it into real, actionable data. It creates a personalized healing pathway that never stops adapting to the person using it.
The ultimate vision behind all this is just incredibly inspiring. Ed Boyden, who is an absolute pioneer in the field of optogenetics, really hit the nail on the head. He said, the goal is to take this art of neuroscience and help it mature into a mature science through technology that lets us see and control complex systems with ground truth level accuracy. And honestly, that is exactly what this platform is doing. It's ground truth accuracy, literally operating at the speed of human thought. We are standing right on the edge of an era where our own neural signals become the ultimate tool for recovery. By closing that gap between what we intend to do and what we actually can do, between the injury itself and the recovery process, we are completely rewriting the rulebook on what's medically possible. So I want to leave you with a bit of a wild question to chew on. As we keep building these systems where biology and technology perfectly merge, how will humanity evolve once we have the power to interactively guide our very own neuroplasticity? Thanks for hanging out and exploring this with me today. And hey, keep questioning the limits of what our minds can really do.